Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Cam, and welcome to the new release roundup for April and May of 2021. If you're new to the channel, the new release roundup is where I take a look at all of the new release movies that I saw in a given month and review them all in one big video. Now, I try and do these about once a month. However, April was a very busy month, and I was only able to see about 3 new releases. But May was a bit lighter for me, and I more than made up for it. I saw a lot of new releases in the month of May, and so I combined them into one big video. And with that being said, if there is a certain video you'd like to hear me talk about, the list of all the movies I'll be talking about will be in the description, as well as time codes, so click away to your heart's content. And this will be a very long video, like I said, so if you do like what you see in this video, please be sure to hit that like button, comment your thoughts on these movies down below, and if you like this video and you want to see more like it, please hit the subscribe button and click the bell to allow notifications. It really helps the channel, and the notifications tell you when a new video drops, which is quite frequent. Be sure to follow me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and my Letterboxd. All those links will be in the description as well. So with all the grandstanding and hot dogging out of the way, let's get into the new releases, starting with all the movies that I saw in April of 2021. Voyagers was directed by Neil Burger, who directed a pretty underrated movie, in my opinion, called Limitless, and it starred Colin Farrell, Ty Sheridan, and Lily Rose Depp, among others. It tells the story of a space mission in which a group of humans who are not born on the Earth are set to basically create the next generation of humans who will eventually colonize an Earth-like planet that they will reach in about 90 human years. Among the human population is Ty Sheridan and Lily Rose Depp, and all of these kids are overseen by Colin Farrell. But after a series of unfortunate events, well, let's just say chaos breaks out. Neil Burger's other movie, Limitless, I really enjoy. It's not the greatest, it does have some problems, but on the whole, I think it's a lot smarter than the average bear. It asks a lot of pretty cool questions that you could theorize about. Like, if you were given a pill that could unlock, like, all 100% of your brain, what would you do with it? That's all very much a work of fiction in that we all pretty much use all of our brain and it is all incredibly active, but it's fun to think about that kind of stuff. So when I heard that this movie was being directed by Burger, there was a part of me that felt very optimistic, and on the whole, I actually like this movie. I don't think it's perfect, it's very formulaic, but when I walked out of there, I was like, wow, that was a lot better than I've seen people talk about it. The biggest compliment that I could give to this movie is the CGI and the effects in this movie just look super crisp. They look really, really good. There are some space movies that just, even by like today's standards, just look super cringe, but here, they actually look like really good. There's actually some locations on the ship that look like they used actual sets, which if that's the case, thumbs up there. And because it looks like they use physical locations, it gives this spaceship a bit of life and nice backdrops for the chaos that is about to commence. I quite enjoyed Colin Farrell in the movie. He actually is one of the few humans who is actually caring about these kids because the company that launches the mission are just like, screw them, you know, they're gonna die in space anyway, what do we care? Colin Farrell gets attached, maybe a tad too attached, but attached nonetheless. Without getting into spoilers, there's a couple scenes in which he talks to Lily Rose Depp about some of the mementos that he took from Earth, and it's honestly quite nice. Ty Sheridan and Lily Rose Depp do have good performances here. Normally with teen actors, it's very hit or miss, but they actually do a pretty solid job. Basically, these are genetically enhanced kids. They have no mothers or fathers, they're just born through technology. So but at the beginning, they're pretty emotionless, but by the end, well, that all goes completely out the window. And starting from these little moments to just these bigger moments, it's all handled pretty well. The biggest criticism that I have heard about this movie is that it's essentially Lord of the Flies in space. And yeah, I can't really argue with that point. This movie is essentially Lord of the Flies in space. And if you have read that book or watched that movie, then I'm sure you can probably put two and two together and figure out what's going to happen here. I think about 20 minutes in, I had a feeling of what was going to happen. And I'm not a screenwriter, I'm not even close, but I've seen enough of these kind of teen movies to where, like, let's just say something happens and they have to deal with it, and things just go completely south to the point where I just like, okay, that's probably going to happen here, and it does. But on the whole, I think that this movie actually is trying to do a lot more, it's trying to put a lot more effort forth than probably a lesser movie would do. And so for that reason, I'm going to give this a good rating. I don't think that this is necessarily forgettable. However, I don't think it's really great or amazing either. It's just good. There's a lot more effort put forth than it honestly really needed, but at the same time, it's also just kind of there. Mortal Kombat. Or, wait, no, that's not it. Mortal Kombat! Was directed by Simon McCoy and is based on the legendary video game franchise of the same name. Rumors of a Mortal Kombat movie have just been circulating forever. As long as I've been in tune with, like, the movie news scene and movie journalism, if you will, literally, it's been like once a year you heard some traction about a possible Mortal Kombat movie that's never got off the ground. But a new version of the Mortal Kombat exists, with the 1995 and 97 versions being what they are. Very cheesy and over the top, but the 95 version is fun, and 97 one is an abomination. I'm not too terribly attached to the Mortal Kombat games. I've played the most recent versions, and I have had fun with all of those. Thinking due to how successful this whole franchise has been, I'm honestly surprised there have only been like 3 Mortal Kombat movies and not like 10 or 15. But we have another one for the modern age, and on the whole, this movie is very much a mixed bag for me. I'll just get the stuff I didn't like out of the way first. First, Cole. I did not like this character. I thought he was about as entertaining as this bottle of water. Like, you could have literally, like, the entire time I was sitting there thinking to myself, where's Johnny Cage? Like, he's literally, like, the one human character that people recognize from this series. Even those who haven't played the series. Even me, who never played a Mortal Kombat game until Mortal Kombat X, knew who Johnny Cage was. I suppose we're getting Johnny Cage in the sequel, which, I mean, that's fine, I guess, but then we have this piece of wet bread that's Cole. I did not care about this character. Like, unless it's this Cole fighting off Sub-Zero, then I just don't care. He has a family in this movie that's not even really in the movie enough to really justify them being there. There were times where I saw Cole's wife and daughter, and I was just like, are you guys in the right movie? Oh, they're his family. And another thing that bugged me is the fact that this movie didn't feel like a tournament. I mean, at the very least, Mortal Kombat Annihilation kind of got the tournament feeling down. It wasn't great, but at least it got that down. But in this movie, like, literally, it's like people just attack each other all the time. There's no, like, there's no tournament atmosphere. I don't think you necessarily, like, need a tournament, I suppose, but consider that the main Mortal Kombat games have been centered around a tournament between the Elseworld and the regular world, and one world is going to come out in a tournament. That's been, like, in the DNA. I feel like the movie just didn't care about the tournament stuff and just wanted people to fight each other. That's fine, I suppose, but it just felt like there was something missing. I feel like I am trashing the movie a bit more than I want to, but let me just say there actually is some stuff that did impress me. Most importantly of all, the fights. The fights in this movie are epic. Whoever planned out these fights needs a raise because they deserve it. These fights are brutal, and when they do happen, you're just sitting there like, oh wow, that's something broke there. They're all filmed very well in camera. It looks like they did some stunts, which that's really cool. For a fighting movie, they at least got the fights right. Shang Tsung has his signature, "Your soul is mine," which that was really cool. Scorpion does the whole "get over here," which has been in every trailer for this movie, which shouldn't have been, but there it is. But that's great. Sonya Blade is with the military. They pretty much got every character pretty close to accurate, and I do admire that. If you just want to watch like one scene from this movie to kind of determine if you're going to like it or not, go to the ending fight where it's Cole, Sub-Zero, and eventually Scorpion in the MMA cage. That's about as close to a true blue, like, Mortal Kombat movie that we're probably ever going to get, and it's great. You do have to trudge through a lot of subpar elements to get there, though. I'm not made of stone, so I am going to give this movie a good rating. It did impress me at times, however, it's definitely a mixed bag, and you definitely have to take the bad with the good. Four Good Days was directed by Rodrigo Garcia, who was a producer on In Treatment, so this material is definitely not a stretch for him, and it starred Glenn Close and Mila Kunis, and it tells the story of a mother and a daughter played by Close and Kunis respectively. Kunis is hopelessly addicted to heroin, but she makes one last plea to her mother, played by Close, to try and help her kick the habit once and for all. The movie does a good job of showing that they have been down this road before to a lot of failure. However, whether it's due to love or just, well, love, Close placates Kunis and tries to get Kunis back onto the straight and narrow. For good. I really did not know what to expect with this movie. I took my mom to see it thinking this would be definitely up her alley, and it was, and honestly, this movie actually quite surprised me. Now, let me just say that I think the movie on the whole is very generic. You know exactly where this is headed. But on the whole, the performances in this movie more than carry it. Glenn Close is Glenn Close. She has been this good for many years. But honestly, I think this is the best that I've ever seen from Mila Kunis. I know she was in Black Swan, but I have not seen that movie in a long time. I'll have to go and rewatch it. But on the whole, I think that Mila Kunis just knocks it out of the ballpark here. I think the best way that I could describe this movie is kind of similar to The Way Back, which is still, unironically, my favorite movie of 2020. It is a very brutal movie to watch, however, when you do see where it goes, it is incredibly triumphant. And that goes double for 4 Good Days. It is oftentimes very brutal to watch, definitely some troubling scenes, but on the whole, you do know where it's going, but once you do get there, it is an incredibly triumphant movie. I am going to give it a good rating, because The Way Back was almost too near the knuckle for me, and I think that 4 Good Days is just... They kind of held back just a tad, but on the whole, this movie was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. That's all for April, and now let's get into May of 2021, starting with Wrath of Man. This was directed by Guy Ritchie, we all know who he is, and it starred Jason Statham, among others. It tells a story of a man named H, played by Statham. He is, well, a very mysterious person. He shows up to this armored truck place one day, asks for a job and gets one, and he seems to be very kinda ho-hum and just, normal person. However, you later learn that he is an onion. He's got some layers to him. And, well, to not really spoil anything, let's just say that he is out for some serious revenge against a group of thugs who did him very wrong. I'm so happy that Guy Ritchie is doing these type of movies nowadays, because throughout the 2010s, he was just doing mostly, like, these big-budget studio films, and while I like his 2 Sherlock Holmes movies very much, you also have King Arthur Legend of the Sword and Aladdin. And I actually like King Arthur. I think that it has some good moments, but Aladdin is just a lost cause. I did not like that movie at all. With The Gentleman in 2020, which is in my top 5 of that year, you kind of get the feeling that he was just going back to my kind of movies, the movies that I want to make. And The Gentleman is very much a Guy Ritchie doing Guy Ritchie things movie, and it is glorious. Wrath of Man is definitely more ambitious, and let's just say if this were literally any other director, it would have probably failed. But Guy Ritchie knocked this movie out of the ballpark, and I think this may be my favorite movie of 2021 so far. However, there is another that I'll be talking about that may be giving it a run for its money. If you think that Jason Statham is not really a good actor, I can kind of understand why, but he definitely has some really good acting moments in this movie. At a certain point, you just say to yourself, okay, this guy's not who he says he is. That's due to the very unique narrative, but on the whole, Jason Statham and Guy Ritchie just go together like peanut butter and jelly. Guy Ritchie knows how to get the most out of Jason Statham, and that goes double for this movie. And like I said, this movie has a very unique narrative. And, well, I won't go too deep into spoilers because I honestly think you should go see this movie without anyone spoiling it for you, but essentially, this movie starts in the middle, and then it goes back to the beginning, and then the middle again, and then back to the beginning to tell the rest of the beginning, then catches up at the tail end of the middle, and then goes to the end. I think that's about as best as I can describe it. This may be confusing for some, but I think I was able to follow it just fine. The narrative here is kind of like a very intricate domino set. It doesn't look like much when it's all stacked up like that, but once you start knocking those dominoes over, it's just the most satisfying feeling you could ever imagine. The first 2/3 of this movie are Guy Ritchie setting up his dominoes, and then once he knocks the dominoes over in the last third, it is genuinely some of the best filmmaking that I have seen this year so far. Even if you're not a Guy Ritchie fan, I do highly recommend that you check this out. I'm going to give this an amazing grade. This may be my favorite movie of the year so far, like I said. And I think it's definitely going to be in the top. Here Today was written and directed by Billy Crystal. We all know who he is, legendary comedic actor. And it stars Crystal as well as Tiffany Haddish. It tells the story of a comedy writer named Charlie Burns, played by Crystal, who has had many years of success and many triumphs. However, as he is getting older, he is starting to lose a lot of his faculties. And after a chance encounter with a woman played by Tiffany Haddish, the two inadvertently become friends. I have a lot of time for Billy Crystal. I think that he's a severely underrated comedic actor. He's one of those comedic actors that you don't really remember that he's in something, but when you see him, you just immediately light up and be like, hey, it's Billy Crystal. That literally happened to me. I remember I was watching the Andre the Giant documentary, and literally when Billy Crystal showed up, I'm like, Billy Crystal, what are you doing here? And then I remembered, oh, he was in Princess Bride with Andre. That makes sense. This movie was written, directed, and starred Crystal. And I have a feeling that he was pulling from a lot of his own experiences here. Charlie Burns is just kind of like a burner name. You could pretty much just name him Billy Crystal. That being said, though, he and his relationship with Haddish are the best parts of the movie. When they just have scenes together where they're just, like, alone, like there's an entire scene where they go to Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, that's really great. Or whether it's just Crystal kind of playing off of his fellow actors, it's all great. Literally, if you do go see this movie, watch out for a scene involving Mitch McConnell. It's not a political scene or anything. You'll just know it when you see it. With that being said, though, knowing that this is probably Billy Crystal kind of LARPing himself, I think that he's done it a lot better in his stage show called Billy Crystal's 700 Sundays. It was a one-man show written and directed by Crystal himself. He even won a Tony Award for it, and I believe it is on HBO Max, if my memory serves me right. It will simultaneously make you laugh and make you cry all at once, and I highly recommend it. What am I getting at by telling you all of this? Well, whenever I was watching here today, I was sitting there thinking to myself, just wish I would be watching 700 Sundays, because it is definitely Billy Crystal telling stories from his life, and he's had an incredibly fascinating life. And especially in this movie here today, you kind of get the feeling that he's trying to keep up this facade of being Charlie Burns when you know that it's secretly Billy Crystal kind of poking fun at himself. There's a scene in the movie in which Charlie Burns wrote the screenplay for this movie, which got a lot of awards attention. The movie was directed by Barry Levinson and starred Kevin Kline and Sharon Stone. The damnedest thing is, in this movie, Barry Levinson as himself, Kevin Kline as himself, and Sharon Stone as herself show up in this movie. It was simultaneously confusing and wonderful all at the same time. At the end of the day, I feel conflicted about this one, because I feel like there's a much better version of this if you just watch 700 Sundays. However, Billy Crystal's heart felt like it was in the right place. I think on the whole, I'm going to say this is pretty forgettable. And I hate to say that, because I love Billy Crystal. But on the whole, I would just rather watch his one-man show. Spiral from the Book of Saw was directed by Darren Lee Bousman. Sorry if I butchered his name. And it starred Chris Rock and Samuel L. Jackson. And this is yet another installment in the Saw franchise. It tells the story of a police officer named Detective Banks, played by Rock, who discovers a series of very violent crimes. And this all leads to a serial killer who is seemingly a ghost or a disciple of the legendary Jigsaw Killer, and is leading cops into his very serious and very vile traps. I remember in summer of 2019, I think I was watching the John Campea show or Collider Movie Talk or something like that, when I first heard the rumblings of Chris Rock producing a Saw movie. I remember sitting there thinking to myself, Chris Rock, this Chris Rock, directing a Saw movie, or producing a Saw movie. That is weird. But as it turns out, it's really not weird to Rock, as he is actually a legit fan of all of these movies. He even wrote the screenplay and the proof of concept for Lionsgate to say, hey, I have this already if you want to greenlight it. And considering that a Saw movie is about as expensive to make as a ham sandwich, and it was a no-brainer. I love the original Saw movie. I covered it last year for Scary Mania. I have not seen the sequels, however I hear they are of varying levels of quality. So when I walked into this, I didn't know what to think. And I honestly walked out of this movie very surprised, but in a positive way. Firstly, I want to talk about Chris Rock, because he was the best part of the movie. There's definitely some stuff in the movie where I wish it was expounded upon more. I won't go too deep into spoilers, but let's just say he's not exactly popular amongst the Force, but not in he's a lone wolf. No, it's explained more in the story. But I wish that they went in more of that direction. I hope they do bring him back. I mean, Chris Rock did produce the movie, so maybe he has some clout over whether he comes back or not, but I hope that he does, because I thought he was really, really good. I also thought the traps were suitably brutal. There's this one trap, it's in the very beginning, in which, well, let's just say this guy is stuck to a step stool, and he's hanging on to this tunnel by his tongue, and the game is that he has to lean back to sever his tongue in order to escape. And I'm not doing it justice. It is just... It's like watching through your fingers intense. And as far as the twist goes, I think that will be incredibly divisive. I actually thought it was actually not bad, but I have a feeling that if people do dislike this, I will understand why. At the end of the day, this was, like I said, a lot better than I expected it to be. I'm going to give this a great rating. If they make a Spiral 2, or expound upon some of the storylines that we see here, I would not be against that at all, and I would welcome it. Army of the Dead was directed by Zack Snyder. We all know who he is. And this is his first movie, seemingly post-DCEU. And it stars a lot of people, including Dave Bautista. It tells the story of the near future, where a zombie outbreak has come and gone. There was a big war, and we won it. However, all of the zombies have been commandeered into the city of Las Vegas, and Vegas has been blocked out. It's pretty much like a no-fly zone permanently. Enter a former soldier in that war, played by Dave Bautista, who, despite winning many distinctions, ended up losing his family and is just trying to find some peace in his life. But he is approached by a gozillionaire who says, hey, there's about $200 million in this casino vault. It is non-taxable. It's pretty much untraceable. If you can get that to me, you'll get $5 million for you and your crew. And so Dave Bautista's like, you had me at casino, and they make a deal. And this movie is one big, essentially, mission into literally the zombie capital of the world to try and do a bank robbery. I like Zack Snyder, but I do understand that he is a very divisive filmmaker, especially during the DCEU period. And while I will miss him as part of the DCEU, I'm honestly happy that he is moving on, because that whole DCEU period was just a massive quagmire, and I'm just so happy that he's doing other movies. This movie, its sequel, and there will be a sequel considering it's one of Netflix's most successful movies, and the 300 movie that he wrote during the pandemic, I have a feeling that Zack Snyder has gotten like a newfound energy, and I hope that he capitalizes on it. But as far as Army of the Dead goes, this movie has gotten nothing but rave reviews. Everywhere I turn, people are praising this movie. And it is all very well earned, because this movie was far better than even I, a Zack Snyder fan, thought it would be. Firstly, I love the dynamic between Dave Bautista and his crew. I can't remember all of their names, but I love the dynamic between them. They're very much very tropey, like you have the leader, you have the rebel, you have the shifty one, you have the nerd, and all of that. However, they're all acted so well that you just kind of don't care about that. Honestly, the first 15 minutes of this movie needs to be studied, and how to bring everybody up to speed on a traumatic event and how that traumatic event came to, well, an end. It's brilliant. There's a delicate balance between serious stuff and comedic stuff, and I think it's all done very well. And speaking of that, I think this is a good place to talk about the zombies, because the zombies in this movie are not only look really good, but are also just very intimidating. There's definitely a mix of influences from the George Romero of the Dead series to 28 Days Later, and everything in between. This is definitely a melting pot in terms of zombies, and I think it's all done very well. My one problem with the movie is that, yes, it is too long. This movie is just over 2.5 hours long, and I think it could easily be like a 2:15, even a 2-hour movie if you really wanted to go that lean. My problems with the length is that there are more than one scenes where you know that the obvious guy who's going to turn on the team, you know they're going to turn on the team, and literally the team member's like, why are you even here? What's your motive? And I'm just like, guys, he's sent by the company. Like, put 2 and 2 together here. Like, think about it. Thankfully, those are few and far between, and the rest of the movie is actually pretty great. I hear rumblings that a sequel is already in the works, and honestly, I'm here for it. I'm going to give this movie a great rating. It is too long, but the content of this movie is so well that I can't be too hard on it. Like I said, I will be there for the sequel, and I am just so happy that Zack Snyder is back to doing more of his own stuff. Profile was directed by Timur Bekmambetov, I hope I said that right, and this movie is based on a very harrowing true story. It tells the story of a journalist who is tasked with seeing how ISIS recruits its members through social media, and so she creates a dummy profile and meets one of their more, let's just say, prolific leaders. But something unexpected happens. Well, she ends up falling in love with the dude. This movie hasn't really gotten a ton of respect, and I was actually optimistic going into this, because Timur Bekmambetov produced Searching, which was one of my favorite movies of 2018. That movie is supremely excellent. And I think that Timur Bekmambetov is becoming like the king of these movies where all of the movie is filmed on like iPhone or iMac cameras. I think that's going to be his niche. Unfortunately, this is not as good as Searching, and I think this is probably one of the more disappointing movies that I've seen all year. What I will say, though, is that there's actually some pretty good moments of tension, both near the beginning and near the end. I won't spoil the end, but in the beginning, you hear all of these horror stories about how these younger girls convert to Islam. They go to Syria to join ISIS, and it turns out it was nothing like they thought, and it just all goes straight to hell. Just a bit of a side note, in one of my college classes, it was called Marketing and Communications, and we kind of took a bit of a side road, if you will, to talk about how ISIS went about recruiting. How they would downplay America, and they would build themselves up, even though being nothing like their videos. On the whole, I liked the main journalist. I wanted her to succeed, but at the same time, she kind of falls down the rabbit hole to the point where she loses grip on, like, her actual life, to the point where her boyfriend's like, okay, what are you doing? Like, who are you? I don't know you. And to the point where I'm just like, lady, did you not tell your boyfriend about what you're doing? Because from what I've seen in the movies about people who go undercover, they tell their significant others, saying, whatever you see me do in this other life, that is not me. That is a character. I will come back. There is a scene in which they do that. There is no scene like that. So some of the decisions that this girl makes, you're just like, why would you do that? Why would anyone do that? And to the point where when the boyfriend just straight up calls her toxic, I agreed with him. That's not good. At the end of the day, like I said, I was very disappointed with this. I wanted it to be so much more than it was. But it was just a generic person with a different identity kind of movie. And you know exactly where it's headed. I'm going to give it a forgettable rating. I'm not going to give it a horrid, because there's actually some good scenes of tension in here. But you can happily skip this one. Those Who Wish Me Dead was written and directed by Taylor Sheridan, the writer of such movies as Wind River and Hell or High Water, which are both awesome. And it stars Angelina Jolie as a park ranger and, well, a fire watcher. She is going about her business when she stumbles upon a young boy who is running for his life. She discovers that he is on the run for a reason, and this very mysterious group are very much after him. I am a massive fan of Taylor Sheridan. I love Hell or High Water. It's a super underrated movie, and Wind River is just as good. So when I heard that he was actually going to be directing a movie as well as writing it, I was taking 50 of those, please. And I could safely say that this is the worst of Taylor Sheridan's movies, but with that in mind, it's still really good. I really enjoyed Angelina Jolie here. She was channeling more of her Lara Croft side, and I'm just happy when her Lara Croft side comes out because that's when she's just so much fun. And that goes double for here because she kicks a lot of butt, and it's a lot of fun to watch. But now let's talk about the villains, played by Aidan Gillen and Nicholas Hoult. They are this close to being over the top, but they're also not. They're just the right amount of sinister, and you hate them very quickly. They kind of reminded me, strangely, of like Sugar from No Country for Old Men, in that they really don't care who they hurt. They're just on a mission, and they will not stop until they accomplish that mission. I also love the little boy. Child actors very much are a hit and miss proposition, but this little boy more than carried his own, and he has to do a lot of heavy acting, and he pulls it off. I think there's just something missing from this movie. A central villain, or somebody that Aidan Gillen and Nicholas Hoult are reporting to, or someone. Because in Hell or High Water, you know why Chris Pine and Ben Foster are robbing these banks. They're trying to save their farm. And Jeff Bridges is not an evil person, he's just doing his job. I feel like in Those Who Wish Me Dead, Taylor Sheridan eschews his more shade of gray style of storytelling and goes for more of a black versus white or a good versus evil type of storytelling. And I'm not saying it didn't work, it did, but this is definitely the most forgettable of Taylor Sheridan's work. But with that in mind, this movie still went above and beyond. There's a lot of great effects, a lot of great action, and on the whole, I'm going to give this a great rating. Like I said, this is the worst of Sheridan's movies, however, it's still pretty damn good. The Mitchells versus the Machines. I had no plans on reviewing this, but literally, I would go on Twitter every day and hear somebody talk about it. How good it is, how it's the best movie of the year. I just turned into Arnold from Kindergarten Cop. Just shut up! So I finally was like, alright, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to watch this. And I am so glad that I did. This movie was directed by Michael Rianda, and it tells the story of the Mitchell family, who are, well, very dysfunctional. The father and the oldest daughter could not be any more different if you wanted them to be. The father is more of like a sportsman type, and the daughter wants to be a filmmaker. As a matter of fact, in the movie she says she connects more with movies than people. Yeah, same. But she just got accepted to film school and is on her way out there until her plane trip gets canceled, and her father's like, we'll drive you there, which is just crestfalling news for the main girl. And the world's worst road trip ensues. And just when you think it's all said and done, the robots rise up. Again, context. Essentially, the Amazon of this world. I don't know what this company's called, but I'm just going to call them the Amazon of this world, because it's essentially a piss take on Amazon. But the Amazon of this world gets smart and rises up, essentially taking over all of the humans in literally like a day. And it's up to the Mitchells to stop them. And yeah, like I said, this movie is just, it's really, really good. It's awesome. Firstly, I want to talk about the animation, because there's a part of me that is very much drawn to more of like the traditional forms of animation, like hand-drawn, 2D animation, claymation, stop motion, and all that. But this is some of the nicest looking computer animation that I have seen all year. When something looks dirty, it looks really dirty. If something is meant to look clean and shiny, it looks clean and shiny. The animation in this movie is really on point. Sony is subtly putting in their work in terms of the animation department. But where this movie's strength lies is in its story. This movie has a heart that is big as all outdoors. The relationship between the father and the daughter kind of reminded me of the relationship between Goofy and Max in a Goofy movie. I know that sounds like a weird comparison, but throughout that movie, It's Goofy trying to connect with his son, and his son just basically not being able to be asked. And that goes double for this movie. They want to love each other, but they are just, like, literally going in different directions. It's painful at times, it really is. Especially when you consider how the mother tries to get them to connect, and it just really doesn't work. And as far as this movie goes, the hype is very much real. I'm going to give this an amazing grade. Will this be my favorite of the year? I'm not sure, though it is dangerously close to the top 5, maybe the top 3. Dream Horse was directed by Euros Lyn, and it stars Toni Collette and Damian Lewis, and this is based on a true story. It tells the story of a woman named Jan, played by Toni Collette. She has a very humdrum life. She has a very, very boring job. She has a BS job, basically. She takes care of her parents, and she has a husband who was once pretty active, but has seen better days. And so she one day just up and decides, I'm just going to breed a racehorse. But she has neither the experience or the money to do so. The experience comes in the form of Howard Davies, played by Damian Lewis, a former disgraced horse owner who helps her out in any way that he can. And as far as the money goes, well, Jan gets the entire small town of Wales that she lives in to chip in to fund this dream horse, which they name Dream Alliance. I have a soft spot for sports movies, which is why, despite Drive's existence, my favorite movie of 2011 was Warrior. Sports movies are very cliche. They have a playbook, if you will, that they follow almost to the letter. But I can't lie, Dream Horse was so much fun to watch. Firstly, Toni Collette proves that she was thoroughly robbed of getting that Oscar for Hereditary, because she is the best part of this movie. She kind of reminded me a lot of Diane Lane from Secretariat, in that she's a very driven woman who will not take no for an answer, and no is like a one-letter word to her. She can be happy, sad, very frustrated, and there's a great scene in which, guess a mild spoiler, she has a very difficult relationship with her father. Her father thinks that she has wasted her life, and she just goes off on her dad. It's brutal, but you do understand why. I enjoy Damian Lewis. I've loved his work ever since I saw him as Sergeant Winters in Band of Brothers, which you all should watch, by the way. And he is very supportive despite him being burned by horse racing in the past. And I think the best way that I can describe this movie is comfort food. It's not going to rock the world or anything, but it is done so well and it tastes so good that you really just don't care. That goes double for this movie. I'm going to give it a good rating, but like a very strong good. I had a lot of fun with this movie, and, well, I hate using this cliche, but it's a crowd pleaser. And now let's wrap things up by talking about A Quiet Place Part 2. This was written and directed by John Krasinski. By now we all know who he is, Jim from The Office, and Alfred Hitchcock reincarnated. And this is the sequel to the excellent original Quiet Place, which was released in 2018. The Quiet Place crew is back, minus John Krasinski. And after defeating one of the monsters, let's just say, they have a new bout of confidence to them, and they step out beyond the sandpath, and they encounter the monsters that they defeated, plus some new ones. The original A Quiet Place is outstanding. I still think that movie is just excellent to this very day, to the point where in late 2019, my local planetarium has movie screenings. They don't do it for right now. It's on pause due to the stupid virus. But once it kicks on, I will be there night one. But one night in late 2019, I think late November, early December, they showed A Quiet Place. And just to give some context, it was on a massive screen. Like, it was basically, the screen was on the ceiling, and it was a big, like, circle. I'll put an image there, I'm not doing it justice. Basically, I love A Quiet Place, and when they announced a sequel, I figured, yeah, that's only logical. But I was afraid, because even though John Krasinski was coming back to write and direct it, sequelitis, that's all I'm saying. And this was the movie that I was going to see before all the theaters closed, and I was just crestfallen. But wow, this movie was more than worth the wait, because this movie may be my favorite of 2021 so far. I think my order for right now is A Quiet Place Part 2, Wrath of Man, and Mitchells vs. the Machines. In terms of A Quiet Place sequel, they did about as great a job as you could ever ask for. Not only did they expand upon what we already knew, but introduced us to new things, and it was all handled very well. Emily Blunt continues to prove that she is secretly one of the best actresses working today. Not only does she have to help out her children on more than one occasion, but she also has to fight off these monsters, and they're not exactly easy to defeat, despite the fact that they have the secret to defeat them. It's a temporary solution. They have to find a permanent one fast. They just don't know what to do. But by far and away, the best part of this movie are two actors, Millicent Simmons and Noah Jupp. When I was doing research for the original A Quiet Place for my initial review, I found out that Millicent Simmons is actually deaf in real life. She acts better than most people with regular hearing, and that goes double for A Quiet Place Part 2. She is given more time on screen, and she knocks it out of the ballpark every time. And I hope that Noah Jupp gets work for like the next 3 decades, because he deserves it. He more than holds his own here as well, especially a very ouch-filled scene. I won't spoil it, but it is legitimately one of the most painful scenes I've watched in a movie this year. Cillian Murphy is, of course, excellent here. Digimon Hansu, the few scenes that he does have, is great as well. And I was afraid that this movie was going to be kind of nerfed, because the first Quiet Place was wrapped so much in the concept of you cannot make a sound for any reason. Even like a small, like, could just set a ton of monsters on you. But John Krasinski did a great job of producing new challenges. I won't go too deep into spoilers, but essentially there's a lot of new hurdles where you think you know where it's going, but then you don't. I joke about him being Alfred Hitchcock reincarnated, but I'm only about like 33.3% joking. I think he might be like Alfred Hitchcock's secret grandson or something. Because John Krasinski has an eye for filmmaking that is rarely seen nowadays. And in A Quiet Place Part 3, John Krasinski is not involved, which makes me very sad. However, I do remain optimistic, because this movie was so good that just bring on A Quiet Place 3 like tomorrow, and I will happily go see it. I'm going to give this an amazing grade. It is my favorite movie of the year so far. It's going to be very tricky knocking it off the perch. Whew. Well, that is all for the new release roundup for April and May of 2021. Did you see any of the movies I talked about? Leave a comment below telling me all about it. I'm going to try not to combine months too often, but April was just a hopelessly busy month for me, and so I didn't see as many movies as I wanted to, but May did more than make up for it. June's new release roundup, though, will be a standalone video. But if you like this video, please be sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts down below, and if you like this video and you want to see more like it, hit the subscribe button and click the bell to allow notifications. That way, when a new video drops, you'll be the first to know about it. My name is Ryan Cam. I'll see you in the next one.